Ambassador Zethkar stepped off his transport ship and breathed the strange air of New Terra Prime. The human world smelled different from any planet the Vorthak had conquered before. It carried scents of growing things and water and something else he could not name. His four-armed body moved with practiced grace as he adjusted his ceremonial armor. The purple scales that covered his reptilian form gleamed in the alien sunlight. Behind him walked 6 Vorthak warriors in full battle gear. Their plasma rifles hummed with deadly energy. Their armor could stop bullets and energy beams. They had conquered 17 star systems with weapons like these. Today they would add number 18 to their collection. A small group of humans waited near a simple metal building. Zethkar studied them with his large yellow eyes. They looked so weak and soft. No natural armor, no claws or fangs, just pale skin and strange hair that grew only on their heads. One of them stepped forward with a smile. "Welcome to New Terra Prime," the human said. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the Colonial Defense Force, and this is Lisa Chen, our diplomatic advisor." The human called Jake wore a simple green uniform with no armor. The female called Lisa wore civilian clothes. Neither carried visible weapons. Zethkar found this puzzling. When the Vorthak met new species, both sides always came armed and ready for battle. "I am Ambassador Zethkar of the Vorthak Collective," he replied in his deep voice. "I bring greetings from our mighty empire and an offer of membership in our great civilization." Jake nodded and gestured toward the building. "Please come inside. We've prepared a place for talks. Can I offer you something to drink?" This casual attitude confused Zethkar even more. Most species showed proper fear when meeting the Vorthak. For the first time, these humans acted like they were welcoming old friends for a meal. The building's interior was simple and functional. Metal walls, basic furniture, and simple lighting. No luxury or displays of wealth. No advanced technology that Zethkar could see. The humans led them to a room with a table and chairs designed for different body types. "So," Jake said as everyone sat down, "what brings the Vorthak Collective all the way out here to our little corner of space?" Zethkar opened the ceremonial scroll case he carried. "The Collective offers your species a great honor. You may join our empire peacefully. We will provide protection, technology, and guidance. In return, you will follow collective law and provide workers and resources." Lisa Chen leaned forward with interest. "That sounds generous. What happens if we choose not to accept?" "Then your species will be conquered and absorbed by force," Zethkar said matter-of-factly. "This is how it has always been. The strong rule. The weak. The advanced guide the primitive. Your choice is simple. Join willingly or be taken by force." Jake and Lisa exchanged glances. Something passed between them that Zethkar could not read. The captain scratched his chin thoughtfully. "Well, that's quite an offer," Jake said. "Mind if we take a few days to think it over? Maybe discuss it with the neighbors?" The ambassador blinked his large eyes in surprise. Most species either accepted immediately out of fear or rejected the offer and prepared for war. These humans wanted time to think. "You may have 3 standard days," Zethkar agreed. "But understand that this offer will not be repeated. Choose wisely." "Appreciate it," Jake said. "While we're thinking, would you like to see some of our world?" "Nothing classified, just the basic setup we have here." Zethkar found himself curious about these strange beings. That would be acceptable. Over the next day, Jake and Lisa showed the Vorthak delegation around the human settlement. Everything seemed primitive by collective standards. The humans used projectile weapons instead of energy beams. Their vehicles ran on chemical fuel instead of antimatter. Their buildings were made of metal and concrete instead of grown crystal. But something nagged at Zethkar's mind. The humans seemed too relaxed for a species facing conquest. They went about their daily tasks without fear. Some even stared at the Vorthak with obvious curiosity instead of terror. That evening, Jake invited Zethkar to dinner at what the humans called a mess hall. The food was strange but edible. During the meal, Zethkar noticed people coming and going through doors marked with symbols he did not recognize. "Captain Morrison," he said, "I observe much underground activity in your settlement. What lies beneath?" Jake smiled and took a bite of his food. Storage, mostly. Supplies, equipment, that sort of thing. Why do you ask? The collective likes to understand the capabilities of potential new members, Zethkar explained. Perhaps you could show us your military forces. It would help in planning your integration. Sure thing, Jake said easily. The boys have been itching for a good demonstration anyway. We can set something up tomorrow if you want. That casual response worried Zethkar more than threats would have. In his experience, primitive species either boasted about their strength or tried to hide their weakness. These humans did neither. Later that night, Zethkar stood alone on a balcony overlooking the human settlement. The night air carried more of those strange scents. In the distance, he could see lights moving underground through what must be transparent tunnels. The activity seemed far more extensive than simple storage would require. His communicator chimed softly. A message from the collective fleet waiting beyond the system's edge. They were ready to begin conquest operations on his command. 47 warships with enough firepower to glass the planet's surface if needed. Zethkar looked down at the peaceful settlement below. Something felt wrong about this whole situation, but he could not identify what. The humans were clearly primitive and weak. Their technology was centuries behind the collective. Their weapons were crude, and their defenses minimal. So why did he feel like he was missing something important? Tomorrow he would see their military demonstration. Then he would understand what kind of resistance the collective might face. After that, these humans would have to make their choice. Peace or war. Surrender or conquest. Either way, the Vorthak collective would have a new member species within the week. They always did. The next morning brought clear skies and warm sunshine to New Terra Prime. Zethkar emerged from his assigned quarters feeling rested, but still troubled by the strange behavior of these humans. His warrior escort assembled quickly, their purple scales gleaming in the light. Captain Jake Morrison met them outside the main building wearing the same simple green uniform. His casual smile never seemed to fade. Ready for that demonstration, Ambassador? Indeed, Zethkar replied. I am most curious to observe human military capabilities. Jake led them to a transport vehicle that looked like a metal box on wheels. The ride took them several kilometers from the settlement to what appeared to be an empty field surrounded by low hills. Several other humans were already there, setting up equipment and checking instruments. This is our main training facility, Jake explained as they climbed out. We use it for exercises and demonstrations. Colonel Sam Rodriguez runs the show here. A tall human with graying hair and weathered features approached them. He wore the same green uniform as Jake, but with different symbols on his shoulders. His movements had the confident bearing of an experienced warrior. Ambassador Zethkar, Jake said. Meet Colonel Rodriguez. He's going to show you what our soldiers can do. The colonel extended his hand in the human greeting gesture. Zethkar touched it briefly with one of his 4 hands. Colonel, I look forward to observing your capabilities. You'll see something interesting, I guarantee it, Rodriguez said with a grin that reminded Zethkar uncomfortably of a predator showing its teeth. The demonstration area was a roughly circular field about 500 meters across. Strange metal. Objects were scattered around it, barriers, obstacles, and what looked like weapon emplacements. At the far end stood several large shapes covered by camouflage netting. We'll be using some captured equipment for today's exercise, Rodriguez explained. Gives the boys a chance to practice against real gear instead of simulations. He gestured toward the covered shapes. Those are some Vorthak combat drones we acquired a while back. Nothing too advanced, just basic infantry support models. Zethkar felt a chill run through his scaled body. How had these primitive humans acquired Vorthak military equipment? The colonel's casual mention of captured gear suggested this was not their first contact with the collective. How did you obtain Vorthak drones? He asked carefully. Rodriguez shrugged. Oh, you know how it is. Things drift around in space. Traders bring stuff by. We like to study whatever we can get our hands on. Before Zethkar could ask more questions, a group of 12 humans approached the demonstration area. They wore simple combat gear, basic armor plates, helmets, and equipment belts. Their weapons looked primitive compared to Vorthak plasma rifles. Most carried projectile guns of various types. "This is Alpha Squad," Rodriguez announced. "They'll be running a standard engagement scenario against the drones. Nothing fancy, just basic tactics." The squad leader was a young woman with short brown hair. She moved with quiet confidence as she checked her weapon and spoke to her team. Rodriguez called her over to meet the ambassador. "Sergeant Alex Turner," he said. "She's been with us for 3 years. One of our best small unit leaders." Turner nodded politely to Zethkar. "Pleasure to meet you, Ambassador. Hope you enjoy the show." Something in her eyes made Zethkar uncomfortable. It was not fear or hostility, but a kind of focused intensity he had seen before in apex predators. This human looked at him like she was memorizing every detail for future reference. "Begin the exercise," Rodriguez commanded. The demonstration started simply enough. The 12 humans spread out in standard formation and began moving across the field. The Vorthak drones activated and emerged from their concealment. 3 bipedal machines about the size of large humans, armed with energy weapons and protected by military-grade shields. Zethkar relaxed slightly. He had seen these drones in action before. They were efficient killers, capable of eliminating dozens of enemy soldiers before being destroyed. Against primitive human weapons, they should be nearly invincible. The first exchange of fire seemed to confirm his expectations. Human projectile weapons sparked harmlessly off drone energy shields. The drones returned fire with precise energy, beams that forced the humans to scramble for cover behind obstacles. But then something changed. Instead of continuing their frontal assault, the humans began moving in ways that confused the drones' targeting systems. They used the terrain and obstacles in unexpected combinations. More importantly, they began coordinating their attacks in real time, adapting to the drones' responses faster than the machines could adjust. Sergeant Turner's voice carried clearly across the field as she directed her squad. "Danny, flank left and draw fire. Casey, prep the package for Drone 2. Alex, when I give the word, hit Drone 1 with everything." Zethkar watched in growing amazement as the humans implemented a complex tactical maneuver. Private Danny Walsh deliberately exposed himself to draw drone fire, then used his superior mobility to lead the machine into a crossfire from his teammates. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Casey Brooks was doing something Zethkar had never seen before. She was assembling some kind of device using components from her equipment belt and materials scavenged from destroyed obstacles. Her hands moved with practiced speed, creating what appeared to be an improvised explosive device. "What is that? Soldier constructing?" Zethkar asked. "Standard field engineering," Rodriguez replied calmly. "Our people are trained to improvise solutions using available materials." The improvised device detonated against Drone 2 with enough force to overload its shields. The machine staggered, and immediately the humans poured concentrated fire into its weak points. The drone fell within seconds. But what truly shocked Zethkar was what happened when Private Walsh took a hit from Drone 3. The energy beam caught him in the shoulder, burning through his armor and wounding him badly. Instead of falling back or calling for medical aid, Walsh used his position to provide targeting data for his teammates. "Drone 3, bearing 270, shield generator rear left quadrant," he called out, his voice steady despite obvious pain. The remaining humans used his information to coordinate a precise attack that destroyed the drone's shield generator. Within moments, all 3 Vorthak combat units were smoking wrecks scattered across the field. The entire engagement had lasted less than 10 minutes. "Impressive," Zethkar said, though the word felt inadequate. "Your soldiers show remarkable adaptation and improvisation skills." "Thanks," Rodriguez said, "but that was just basic stuff. Want to see something really interesting?" Before Zethkar could answer, more drones emerged from concealment. 6 this time, including 2 heavy models with enhanced weapons and shields. The ambassador recognized them as units that could normally handle a full platoon of conventional infantry. "Begin exercise 2, Rodriguez commanded. This time the humans' response was immediate and devastating. They had learned from the first engagement and applied that knowledge instantly. Instead of treating each drone as a separate target, they attacked the group as a system, identifying and exploiting weaknesses in their coordination protocols. Zethkar found himself leaning forward, fascinated despite his growing alarm. These humans did not just fight. They learned. They adapted. They turned their enemies' strengths against them with a speed and creativity that seemed almost supernatural. By the time the second exercise ended, he understood that he was not watching a primitive species play with captured technology. He was seeing something far more dangerous, a species that treated warfare as a learning experience and used every engagement to become more effective against future enemies. The demonstration was over, but Zethkar's real education was just beginning. 3 days passed like a slow countdown to inevitable conflict. Zethkar spent the time observing human behavior and trying to understand what he had witnessed at the training demonstration. The humans continued their daily routines as if facing conquest was just another minor inconvenience. On the final day, Captain Morrison requested a meeting in the same simple room where they had first talked. Lisa Chen was there again, along with Colonel Rodriguez and several other humans Zethkar had not met before. They all wore the same calm expressions that had puzzled him from the beginning. "Well, Ambassador," Jake said as they settled around the table, "we've had our discussions and reached a decision about your generous offer." Zethkar leaned forward slightly. "And what is humanity's choice?" Jake smiled that predator grin again. "Thanks, but we'll pass. We appreciate the invitation to join your collective, but we prefer to stay independent." The words hit Zethkar like a physical blow. In all his years of diplomatic service, no species had ever rejected the collective's offer so casually. Most either accepted immediately or raged against their fate. These humans delivered their refusal like they were declining an invitation to dinner. "You understand what this means?" Zethkar asked carefully. "Refusal will result in military conquest. Your world will be taken by force." "We figured as much," Jake replied. "That's why we wanted those 3 days to prepare." Something cold settled in Zethkar's stomach. "Prepare how?" Lisa Chen spoke for the first time. "Oh, the usual things, making sure everyone knows what's coming. Getting supplies distributed, checking equipment, you know how it is." The casual tone of her voice made Zethkar's scales crawl. These humans talked about preparing for war like they were getting ready for bad weather. "I must contact my fleet," he said, standing abruptly. "You have chosen your path." "Of course," Jake said, also rising. "You'll need to use your ship's communicator, I assume. Our local networks might not be compatible with Vorthak systems." An hour later, Zethkar stood in his transport ship's communication chamber. His clawed fingers moved over familiar controls as he established contact with the collective fleet waiting beyond the system's edge. Admiral Kethvar's scaled face appeared on the screen. His yellow eyes gleamed with anticipated victory. "Ambassador, what is the human response?" "They have refused our offer," Zethkar reported. "The conquest may proceed." "Excellent," the Admiral said. "We will begin operations immediately. How much resistance do you expect?" Zethkar hesitated. The memory of those human soldiers dismantling Vorthak drones with such ease haunted him. "Admiral, I recommend caution. These humans are not what they appear to be." "Nonsense," Kethvar replied dismissively. "Our scouts report primitive technology and minimal defenses. This will be a standard operation. We will have the planet secured within 1 rotation." The communication ended, leaving Zethkar alone with his growing dread. He had tried to warn them, but the Admiral was too confident to listen. Soon they would all learn what he had begun to suspect, that humanity was far more dangerous than anyone imagined. The Vorthak fleet entered the new Terra system 12 hours later. 47 warships spread out in standard conquest formation. Each vessel carried enough firepower to level a city. Together they could reduce the planet's surface to molten glass if necessary. Admiral Kethvar commanded from his flagship, a massive dreadnought bristling with weapons. His tactical display showed the human world spinning peacefully below, seemingly unaware of the doom approaching from space. "Begin orbital scan," he ordered. "Locate primary military installations and population centers." The results puzzled his officers. The scans showed scattered settlements but no major cities. No orbital defenses, no fleet formations, no military bases that registered as significant threats. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the humans appear to have no space-based defenses at all. Their largest settlement has less than 50,000 inhabitants. What about their military forces?" "Minimal detection, Admiral. Some small weapon signatures, but nothing that poses a threat to our ships." Kethvar studied the data with growing confidence. "Pathetic. Begin standard bombardment protocol. Target their communication centers and any military facilities you can identify." The fleet's weapons lit up space with deadly energy. Massive beams lanced down toward the planet's surface, striking targets with pinpoint accuracy. Within minutes, every identified human military installation was smoking rubble. "Excellent," the Admiral said. "Deploy landing forces. Begin occupation operations." But as Vorthak transport ships descended toward the planet, something strange began happening. The human settlements they targeted were empty, not evacuated in panic, but systematically abandoned as if their inhabitants had known exactly when and where the attacks would come. The first landing force reported in from what had been the main settlement. "Admiral, the area is deserted. No resistance encountered, but also no population to secure. Check for underground facilities," Kethvar ordered. "They must be hiding somewhere." More reports came in from other landing sites. All the same story. Empty buildings, abandoned equipment, no signs of the human population. It was as if an entire planet's worth of people had simply vanished. Then the attacks began. Small human units struck at Vorthak landing parties with surgical precision. They appeared from nowhere, hit hard and fast, then disappeared again before reinforcements could arrive. Their weapons seemed to have improved dramatically since the orbital bombardment began. "Sir," came a frantic report from Landing Zone 3. "We're under attack by human forces using our own weapons. Repeat, they are using Vorthak energy rifles and shield generators." "Impossible," Kethvar snapped. "How could they have acquired our equipment?" The answer came from Landing Zone 7 minutes later. "Admiral, the humans are not just using our weapons, they're using them better than we do. They've modified our own equipment somehow. Request immediate support." More reports flooded in. The humans were not just fighting with stolen Vorthak gear, they were improving it in real time. Energy rifles modified for higher output. Shield generators networked together for enhanced protection. Communication equipment reprogrammed to jam Vorthak frequencies. Within hours, the supposedly primitive humans had turned the collective's own technology against them with devastating effectiveness. They struck supply convoys, sabotaged equipment, caches, and picked off isolated units with the patience of natural hunters. Admiral Kethvar found himself staring at tactical displays that made no sense. His forces were being systematically dismantled by an enemy that refused to fight according to any known military doctrine. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet. Human source. Put it through." A human face appeared on the main screen. Female, middle-aged, wearing simple clothing. She looked completely calm despite the war raging around her. "Admiral Kethvar," she said. "This is Commander Maria Santos of the Human Defense Force. I think we need to talk." "I do not negotiate with primitives," the Admiral snarled. "Not negotiating?" Maria replied with a smile that reminded him uncomfortably of the expressions he had seen on other human faces. "Just wanted to let you know that you're not fighting the force you think you're fighting. This isn't our military. Admiral, this is our training program." The transmission ended, leaving Kethvar staring at a blank screen. Behind him, more reports came in of Vorthak units being destroyed by increasingly sophisticated human attacks. For the first time in his military career, the Admiral began to understand what fear felt like. 3 weeks into what should have been a routine conquest, Admiral Kethvar faced a reality that challenged everything he understood about warfare. His mighty fleet was trapped in the new Terra system, like insects caught in a web they could not see. Every attempt to withdraw from the system met the same result. Human fighters appeared from nowhere in ships that looked like patchwork collections of different technologies. They moved with impossible coordination, striking at precise moments, to cripple Vorthak vessels without destroying them completely. Sir, his tactical officer reported with barely controlled panic. The humans are using modified versions of our own ships. That interceptor wing is flying Vorthak scouts, but they're moving faster than our specifications allow. Kethavar studied the tactical display with growing horror. The human ships were indeed modified Vorthak designs, but improved in ways that should have been impossible. Enhanced engines, upgraded weapons, better shields, all built using technology that the Collective had supposedly kept secret. How long have they been preparing for this, he whispered. Ambassador Zethkar, who had remained aboard the flagship as an observer, approached the command station. His forearms gestured helplessly as he tried to process what he was witnessing. Admiral, he said quietly, I believe we have made a terrible mistake. These humans knew we were coming. They have been planning this engagement for months, perhaps longer. Before Kethavar could respond, another human transmission came through. This time, it was a different face, a young woman with short black hair, and the calm confidence that seemed to mark all human military personnel. Admiral Kethavar, this is Captain Maria Santos of Human Intelligence. We should talk. I told you before, I do not negotiate with primitives, the Admiral growled. Still, not negotiating, Maria replied. But I think you deserve to understand what's really happening here. You're not the first Vorthak force to visit this system, Admiral. We've been studying your species for quite some time. The words hit Zethkar like a physical blow. Impossible. This is our first contact with humanity. Maria's smile was patient and terrifying. Ambassador Zethkar, isn't it? We've been monitoring collective communications for over a year. We knew about your expansion plans, your conquest doctrine, even your diplomatic protocols. Your entire visit was exactly what we expected, she gestured to something off-screen. The settlement you observed, the military demonstration, even the 3-day delay, all of it was carefully planned to give you specific impressions while we prepared for the real engagement. Admiral Kethavar felt his scaled hands trembling with rage and fear. You used us. This entire operation was a trap. Training exercise, Maria corrected. We needed to field test our defensive strategies against a real collective force. You've been very helpful in identifying weaknesses in our systems. The transmission shifted to show a new location. Instead of the simple settlement Zethkar had visited, the screen now displayed a massive military complex built into the planet's crust. Advanced weapons, sophisticated shields, and technology that looked far beyond what the Collective possessed. This is our actual defensive installation, Maria explained. What you saw on the surface was just for show. We've been preparing for collective aggression ever since we learned about your expansion patterns. Another human appeared on screen, an older man with gray hair and the bearing of a seasoned commander. Admiral, I'm General Patricia Kane, actual commander of human forces in this system. I believe you've met some of my people already. Kethavar recognized the face. This was the human who had been introduced as a civilian advisor during the diplomatic meetings. She had been there the entire time, watching and evaluating while they played their diplomatic games. You deceived us, Zethkar said accusingly. We observed you, Patricia corrected. Everything you saw was real human behavior and capability. We just didn't show you everything we were capable of. She gestured to someone off-screen. For example, meet Lieutenant Colonel Frank Davis, our military historian. He's been documenting collective tactics and psychology for our strategic planning department. A younger human appeared, carrying what looked like a data tablet. Admiral, Ambassador, we've learned quite a lot about Vorthak military doctrine from this engagement. Your species favors overwhelming force applied through conventional tactics, very effective against most opponents, but predictable once you understand the patterns. Frank smiled with the same unsettling confidence all these humans seem to possess. We've been recording every engagement, analyzing your response times, studying your decision-making processes. The data will be invaluable for future defensive planning. Future defensive planning? Kethavar repeated. Of course, Patricia said. You don't think the Collective will stop expansion just because one operation failed, do you? There will be other fleets, other attempts at conquest. We want to be ready for them. She leaned forward slightly. But here's what might interest you more, Admiral. This engagement wasn't conducted by our primary military forces. Most of our fleet assets are still Earth-based, preparing for larger conflicts based on what we've learned from fighting you. The implication hit both Vorthak officers like a meteor strike. If this devastating defeat had been inflicted by a training force, what could the full human military accomplish? Impossible, Kethavar whispered. Your technology is primitive. Your numbers are small. Our technology is adaptive, Frank corrected. We don't just develop weapons and stick with them. We improve everything constantly, especially when we get new examples to study. He held up his tablet, showing technical diagrams. Every piece of Vorthak equipment we've captured has been analyzed, reverse-engineered, and improved. We now understand your technology better than many of your own engineers do. Maria stepped back into view. We've also been studying your psychology, your social structure, your decision-making patterns. We know how Vorthak commanders think, how they react under pressure, what tactical choices they're likely to make in any given situation. In short, Patricia added, we've turned you into a science project. Every move you've made, every decision you've taken, has been predicted and countered based on our analysis of Vorthak behavior patterns. Zethkar found his voice again, though it came out as barely a whisper. What do you want from us? Nothing, Patricia replied. This was never about conquest or territory, this was about learning. We needed to understand how the collective fights so we can defend against future attacks. She paused, studying both Vorthak officers with those calm human eyes. But now that we have that knowledge, we want to make sure you understand something very important. Any future collective expansion toward human space will be met with responses specifically calibrated to exploit Vorthak weaknesses. We're not interested in empire building, Maria added, but we will defend ourselves. And now we know exactly how to do that effectively. The transmission ended, leaving the Vorthak command bridge in stunned silence. Around them, damage reports continued to flow in from units being systematically dismantled by an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. Admiral Kethavar slumped in his command chair, finally understanding the trap they had walked into. They had not been fighting a war. They had been participating in an experiment. The humans had used the entire collective force as test subjects to perfect their defensive strategies. The most terrifying part was not that they had lost, but that they had lost to what the humans considered a training exercise. 6 months after the disaster at New Terra Prime, Ambassador Zethkar stood before the collective high command in the great assembly chamber on the capital world of Vorthak Prime. The massive crystalline walls reflected his image dozens of times, each reflection showing the same haunted expression that had marked his features since his return from human space. The 9 members of the High Command sat in their elevated positions, their ancient scales bearing the scars and honors of countless victories. Supreme Commander Rethvak, eldest of the 9, leaned forward with eyes that had witnessed the conquest of 17 star systems. Ambassador. Rethvak's voice echoed through the chamber like distant thunder. You have submitted a most disturbing report. Explain to us how a primitive species managed to defeat one of our most powerful fleets. Zethkar touched the data tablet that contained his complete analysis of the human encounter. Months of careful documentation, psychological evaluation, and strategic assessment had gone into the report. Every word was backed by recorded evidence and careful observation. Supreme Commander, honored members of the High Command, he began formally. I must report that our fundamental assumptions about humanity were incorrect. They are not a primitive species newly emerged into space. They are something far more dangerous. He activated the chamber's holographic display system. Images from the New Terra engagement filled the air above the assembly. Human soldiers adapting Vorthak technology in real time, ships modified with impossible speed, tactical maneuvers that violated all known military doctrine. The humans approach warfare differently than any species we have encountered, Zethkar continued. They do not simply fight to win battles. They fight to learn from their enemies. Every engagement is treated as an opportunity to gather data and improve their capabilities. Supreme Commander Rethvak's scaled brow furrowed with displeasure. You suggest that Admiral Kethavar's defeat was part of some human strategy? Yes, Supreme Commander. The entire engagement was a carefully orchestrated training exercise. The humans allowed us to attack so they could study our tactics, psychology, and technology. They learned more about the collective in 6 weeks than we learned about them in months of observation. Commander Vestar, youngest of the 9, spoke with barely controlled anger. Impossible. Our intelligence reports indicated primitive technology and minimal defensive capabilities. The intelligence was accurate for what we were allowed to see, Zethkar replied. The humans showed us exactly what they wanted us to observe. Their real capabilities remained hidden until the engagement began. He changed the holographic display to show technical diagrams. They demonstrated the ability to reverse engineer and improve our technology within hours of capturing it. Weapons that took our engineers decades to develop were enhanced and turned against us within days. The evidence was overwhelming. Recorded communications showed humans discussing collective tactical doctrine with intimate knowledge. Captured equipment revealed modifications that improved Vorthak designs beyond their original specifications. Most damning of all were the psychological profiles the humans had compiled on Vorthak command personnel. They studied us like specimens in a laboratory, Zethkar said quietly. Every decision we made, every tactical choice, every response pattern was predicted and countered. Admiral Kethavar never had a chance because the humans knew how he would react before he did. Supreme Commander Rethvak was silent for long moments, studying the data with ancient eyes that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that made the chamber itself seem to tremble. You are certain of these conclusions, Ambassador? Completely certain, Supreme Commander. I witnessed their capabilities firsthand. More importantly, I experienced their psychological warfare techniques. They are masters of deception and misdirection. And your recommendation? Zethkar had dreaded this moment for months. The recommendation that went against everything the collective had ever done, everything they believed about their place in the galaxy. Immediate reclassification of humanity from primitive species suitable for conquest to existential threat requiring total avoidance, he said formally. The humans must be quarantined from collective space indefinitely. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Several commanders stood and shouted challenges to his assessment. The idea that the mighty Vorthak collective should avoid any species was almost incomprehensible to minds that had known only victory for generations. Supreme Commander Rethvak raised one four-fingered hand, and silence returned instantly. Explain your reasoning, Ambassador. The humans do not seek empire or conquest in the traditional sense, Zethkar said, but they will defend themselves with overwhelming effectiveness. More importantly, they learn from every encounter. Each engagement with them will only make them more dangerous to future attackers. He changed the display again, showing strategic projections based on human capabilities. If we attempt another assault, they will be ready with specific countermeasures designed to exploit Vorthak weaknesses. If we send a larger fleet, they will use it as an opportunity to test their defenses against greater numbers. And if we ignore them entirely, then they will likely continue their current pattern of defensive development and eventual expansion into their local region of space. Based on their technological adaptation rate, they will become a major galactic power within decades. The implications settled over the chamber like a suffocating cloud. The collective had built its empire on the assumption that superior technology and overwhelming force could defeat any opponent. The humans had proven that assumption false. Commander Kesvik, eldest female of the High Command, spoke for the first time. What of our other expansion operations? How does this affect our current conquests? All operations in sectors adjacent to human space should be suspended immediately, Zethkar replied. The humans have demonstrated the ability to monitor our communications and predict our strategic movements. They may already be preparing defenses for species we have targeted. Supreme Commander Rethvak stood slowly, his ancient frame moving, with the weight of terrible decisions. The High Command will consider your recommendations, Ambassador. You are dismissed. As Zethkar left the chamber, he heard the beginning of heated debate behind him. Some commanders called for massive retaliation against the human insult. Others demanded proof that his assessment was accurate. A few quietly suggested that perhaps it was time for the collective to reconsider its expansion policies entirely. 3 days later, the decision was announced throughout collective space. All operations within 50 light-years of known human territory were suspended indefinitely. The official reason given was strategic reassessment of regional priorities. Privately, military commanders received classified briefings on new standing orders. Any contact with human forces was to be avoided. Any human technology discovered was to be destroyed rather than studied. Any intelligence regarding human capabilities was to be reported immediately to the High Command. The Vorthak Collective, conqueror of 17 star systems, had officially acknowledged its first species too dangerous to conquer. Zethkar spent his remaining years in quiet service to the Collective Intelligence Division. He never returned to active diplomatic duty, and he never forgot the lesson learned in human space. Sometimes, late at night in his private quarters, he would stare at star charts showing the ever-expanding region marked with warnings about human activity. The most terrifying thought was not that humanity had defeated the collective, but that they had done it while treating the entire engagement as a learning experience. Somewhere in that growing sphere of human space, they were preparing for the next encounter with species like the Vorthak. And next time, they would be ready for anything.